My name is Heather Lynn Wilkes, and I am the home-to-home area leader at Rich Woods East Campus. I'm here today to share with you some thoughts on the second sermon in the Lenses series, Yeah But. If there's anything that this world doesn't lack, it's advice on relationships. We have books, TV shows, newspaper columns, friends, neighbors, a stranger down the street. Everyone has an idea about what relationships should look like and advice for how to improve them. What strikes me about all of this material on struggling relationships and how to improve them is that very often the struggles we have in our relationships with people often translate into a struggle with our relationship with God. It creates a lens through which we view God. In the first sermon in this series, If Then, we talked about relationships with God based on a bargain. If I only do what I'm supposed to do, then God will do what He's supposed to do. We see this all around us all the time. If I only raise these kids right, then they will never let me down. If I only work as hard as I can, then my boss will never have any reason to fire me. Sometimes this works for us, and sometimes it doesn't. Then we often transition into the yeah but relationship with God. And this is a relationship based on the idea that God is sovereign, that He's going to do what He's going to do regardless of what we think we should do. And often as we transition into this type of relationship, our motives for serving God also tend to change. And sometimes these motives aren't very good. There's fear, there's obligation, frustration, there's struggle, and distance. For better or worse, we tend to deal with God the same way that we deal with people. So let me ask you this. How many of you have ever experienced these negative emotions in your relationships? How many of you have ever thought or said, yeah, I may be in a relationship with you, but I don't have to be happy about it? Let me share a story with you. Some years back, my family and I were living in Mississippi. And one morning, an elder's wife at the church where we worshiped approached me and asked me to consider working in a ministry called Matt's House. Matt's House is a local emergency shelter for battered women and their children. Because Matt's House is part of a faith-based organization, they required their residents to attend a weekly Bible study. Local churches each took one Sunday a month, and they provided this lesson for the women and for their children. I was being asked to prepare a lesson and a craft for the children. Now, there wasn't much about this that sounded very appealing to me. I am not a kid person, and I'm definitely not a craft person. I never babysat, and I never even really liked young kids until I had my own. And even then, my own were the only ones I cared to spend any amount of time with. But what they needed was a children's teacher. I might have felt differently if they'd asked me to prepare a lesson for the women, but that's not what I was being asked. When I looked at my reasons for either saying yes or no, my reasons for saying no seemed very selfish. Someone needed to step up and do it. I wasn't currently serving anywhere else. And besides, what kind of jerk would I be to say no to a ministry like Matt's House? So because I felt obligated, I said yes. I said yes because I was afraid of what the elder's wife would think of me if I said no. And I was secretly afraid of what kind of Christian I really was if I couldn't get past my own desires in order to serve where I was needed. So I served at Matt's House for just about a year. I had good mornings and bad mornings. Some mornings I left flying high, and others I left promising myself I was never going back to that place. All in all, I feel that I did some good work there. And some mornings I even felt that I was making a difference for those women and children. But underneath those surface good feelings, serving at Matt's House really just left me very, very frustrated. I felt put upon by the woman who had asked me to get involved, by my church for signing up for something when they obviously didn't have enough volunteers. And I even felt put out at God, who had allowed this opportunity to come before me and forced me to make a decision on if I was going to do it or not. Now, obviously, neither the elder's wife, nor the church, nor God were necessarily responsible for my feelings. I knew what my strengths and weaknesses were in serving before I said yes to it. I said yes out of a sense of fear and obligation, and that colored my relationship with everyone and everything that I saw as being a part of roping me into this activity that I didn't really want to do. Now, it may seem obvious, but I think it's worth saying anyway. A relationship that is based on fear or frustration or obligation is not a healthy one. And any time our relationship with God looks like that for any extended amount of time, it's not healthy. We can never be who God is calling us to be in Him if we're only serving Him because we're afraid of Him or we're frustrated with Him. And even beyond that, serving God only out of a sense of obligation is exhausting. And it is a long way from the easy yoke and light burden that Jesus promised us in Matthew chapter 11, verse 30. As you move into your time of discussion with your group, I would like for you to share a time when you did something purely out of obligation, when in your heart you really didn't want to be doing it. How did you feel before the activity happened? How did you feel in the middle of it? And how did you feel when it was all done? And how did you end up feeling about the person that you think roped you into doing it in the first place? Thank you for allowing me to share these thoughts with you. I hope you have a great conversation.